my dark horse this week, week 10, and that is just who we were talking about. Jeff Wilson Jr., running back, new running back for the Miami Dolphins. Last week in week 9, we saw him split carries with Raheem Mostert. They both had 9 carries last week. Just an even split, even very similar snap share as well. But one important point that kind of was the narrative that I'm trying to paint here was the passing down work. I don't know if you watched the game, Jacob. That was a great game to watch. Tua slinging the ball over the field, Justin Fields slinging the ball over the field. When you have red zone and the game is predominantly just showing the Dolphins and the Bears, you know it's a good game. I felt like watching red zone the entire first 2.5 hours was the Bears and Dolphins game. It was a great game. But one thing I did notice and one thing I did see was the potential of what could be for Raheem Mostert's future with the Miami Dolphins, and that is revolving around the pass catching work. There was a play, Raheem Mostert within the 20s uh, on let's see, Chicago's side of the field. Probably didn't have a guy within 5 or 6 yards of him. Justin Field throws him a dime piece, beautiful, right through the hands, hits him on the helmet. Raheem Mostert doesn't see another target for the rest of the game. He didn't come in with his previous target before that. Meanwhile, on the other hand, newly acquired Jeff Wilson Jr. catches 3 passes for 21 yards, finds the end zone on one of them. This week, I don't even think he needs to find the end zone. If he keeps that same production, the 3 catches for 21, and he stays efficient on the ground, I think he had 54 yards. That's still a day that sees him succeed or exceed 10 fantasy points. I think he can do a little bit more than that this week. His sleeper projection right now is right around 9.5 fantasy points. No. We're going a little bit higher than that. We're taking it next level. And like I said, I think he can do it without the TDs if he continues to get that passing down work. One of the other things that's also been kind of interesting to me relating to like what Miami's been doing with their backfield post trade deadline and leading up into the trade deadline, trading Chase Edmonds, who necessarily didn't really work out that well, is that I kind of started looking at Mostert for what he is. He's a 30-year-old running back in the NFL, and there's not a lot of them out there this day and age. Sure, there's Rex Burkhead in Houston. Yes, there's Cordell Patterson. And I want to really focus on Cordell Patterson. I thought this was just kind of an interesting fact. In their careers up to this point, Cordell Patterson has had 394 carries to Jeff Wilson Jr.'s 391. And actually, that's flip-flopped. Jeff Wilson Jr. has 394 carries, so 3 more carries than Cordell Patterson. Obviously, Jeff Wilson Jr. or Raheem Mostert is 2 years younger. But it's interesting to me to see the dynamics of how these teams are working these running backs. And I think we're going to see more and more. Cordell Patterson just missed 4 games on the IR, comes back. He doesn't come back to the workload that we were seeing him have before he got injured, right? He only had 7 or 8 carries. He was efficient with them. He saw the touchdown. He also got the passing down work. I see a similar thing with Raheem Mostert. They need a bruising back. Sure, Raheem Mostert got the goal line touchdown. He got the goal line carry. He's also very brittle. He's not as durable as Cordell Patterson has been up until recently. With that being said, I think that's another reason why they brought Jeff Wilson back, a guy that can kind of get in between the tackles, do that dirty work. And clearly, we see him a lot better with the hands as well in the passing game. So for those 2 reasons, for Jeff Wilson to be successful this week and for weeks to come, he needs to get the goal line carries, which I think he can get, and he needs to get the passing down work, which I think he can get. Not to mention, both of these running backs were in San Francisco when Mike McDaniels was the offensive coordinator, so clearly he sees something in both of them. But from an article I read just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was Fantasy Pros, it was the narrative that they were painting was that while both were in San Francisco, Jeff Wilson Jr. ran like 70% of the passing down works when both of them were on the same team together. So it just kind of paints a picture that this is what we can expect from Jeff Wilson Jr. to come. And I think it fits in nicely with his matchup this week. A couple of guys that I like that I would start. I always get this part screwed up. That's what I think is so funny is you think I would have figured it out by now. A lot of guys that I like less than Jeff Wilson Jr. this week are Michael Pittman at Las Vegas, Curtis Samuel, who had the huge fluke touchdown. He goes against Philadelphia this week. Kirtland Sutton against Tennessee, Drake London, and a couple of running backs. Najee Harris, a workhorse running back against New Orleans, and James Conner, who just came back last week off of injury for the Arizona Cardinals. For those and those reasons alone, that is my dark horse for the week, Jeff Wilson Jr. Jacob, thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great choice, man. I think once he was traded there, I didn't really tell this to anyone because I wanted to pick him up in every league, and I'm so mad because we play in our keeper league. Not that I would keep Jeff Wilson in the future. I'm just saying that's the league I'm talking about, where he was on the waiver wire, and I wanted to pick him up so bad. Like, this was before this previous week, and I didn't have room for him because of all my players were on bye. So I was rostering 2 defenses, 3 tight ends because
Yeah.
all my players were on bye, and I didn't want to drop Fryermuth or Kittle or my Niners defense. So I left Jeff Wilson out on the waivers, and then he gets picked up for 250 fab out of 1,000. So I'm like, man, I should have grabbed him. I should have just dropped one of these bums on my bench. But I had a feeling that he was going to take the role over immediately. And it looks like that's going to happen because you think about it. McDaniel was a running back coach in San Francisco. Jeff Wilson's younger. He's fresher. Nothing against Mostert. He was doing a great job as a starting running back in Miami, but
He was.
it just makes logical sense that Jeff Wilson's going to kind of take over this role. And honestly, if I'm Mostert, I'm like, thank you. Now I can stay fresh, stay healthy, hopefully be a part of this playoff run. So it's like, I think it's a win-win for the team. And point being, Jeff Wilson's going to ball out for Miami, especially when he has a good matchup.
Well, I couldn't thank you enough for agreeing with me. And just like we said, Jeff Wilson Jr., running back for the Miami Dolphins, my dark horse of the week for week 10 of the fantasy football season.